Join.
Senator No on debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speakers. Honorable Senators, I rise today in support of Senator Husako's motion to authorize the Standing Senate Committee on National Security and Defense to study the prospect of allowing the Chinese company Huawei to be part of Canada's 5G network. Allowing the committee to study the implication of permitting or not Huawei to have access to our 5G network is of paramount importance. Huawei's bid to build the next generation of mobile communication in Canada is causing some grave concerns for the future of our safety and privacy because of the real threat China poses to our national security and cybersecurity. Le gouvernement communiste de la Chine se sert des entreprises d'État.
The Communist government of China uses state-owned enterprises and private Chinese companies to infiltrate our communication networks and those of our allies. In October 2018, an article was published by Bloomberg. It revealed that China had spied on and hacked more than 30 American companies, including Amazon and Apple, using super microchips, which are barely any larger than a grain of rice. These microchips, assembled on a motherboard by Chinese manufacturers, were discovered in Department of Defense data centers, joint operation centers of the CIA, and on board ships in the Marine Forces.
4 members of the Chinese People's Liberation Army was charged by the U.S. in what is considered to be one of the largest hacks in history, the 2017 Equifax breach. That breach consisted of stolen trade secrets as well as the personal data of 145 million of Americans, namely their names, date of birth, and social insurance number. On that day, U.S. Attorney General William Barr held a press conference announcing the charges. Those charges came after 2 years of investigation. During that press conference, Barr said, and I quote, about 80% of our economic espionage prosecution had implicated the Chinese government, and about 60% of all trade secret theft cases in recent years involved some connection with China. He further stated that the hack caused significant financial damage to Equifax and imposed substantial costs and burden on the Americans as they have to take measures to protect against identity theft. This data has economic value, and this theft can fund China's development of artificial intelligence tools, as well as the creation of intelligence targeting packages. Colleague, almost half of the U.S. population was affected by this staggering hack, which were perpetrated by China military. This is utterly outrageous. These 2 examples are amongst many others when it comes to China. Colleagues, as far as back October 2012, the U.S. House of Representatives Permanent Select Committee of Intelligence released its investigative report on U.S. national security posed by the Chinese telecommunication company Huawei and ZTE after fully investigating into their operations for almost a year. In that report, the committee refers that, and I quote, the onslaught of sophisticated computer network intrusion that originate in China and are almost certainly the work of or have the backing of the Chinese government. The report then concluded that China has the means, the opportunity, and motives to use telecommunication company for malicious purposes. Honorable Senators, as you know all, 3 of our 5 Eyes allies have now recognized the surveillance threat that Huawei represent. US, Australia, and New Zealand have all expressed their concern about Huawei, barring Huawei for implementing technology based on national security grounds, as this Chinese company poses a significant national security risk. Colleague, it is not only our 5 Eyes partner that have expressed their concern about this Chinese company, but also other countries, as well as many security intelligence agencies and reputable experts. Poland, even Japan, have also recognized the cybersecurity risk Huawei technology represents to their national security. In December 2018, the Canadian Security Intelligence Services Director, David Vigneault, warned us in his public speech about the increased state-sponsored espionage in Canada that namely target our companies and university and even the government. He defined foreign interference as espionage, and I quote, "the greatest threat to our prosperity and national interest." En août 2019,
In August 2019, thanks to an access to information request, the National Post obtained notes and speeches made by Mr. Vigneault going back to 2018. The newspaper stated that in a presentation that Mr. Vigneault made in spring 2018 before university administrators, he spoke about espionage targeting Canadian campuses. He said that China represented the largest and most obvious challenge. In autumn 2018, in a presentation in Ottawa to participants in a cybersecurity workshop, Mr. Vigneault warned that China's construction of 5G networks throughout the world has led to new espionage risks, which makes China the greatest threat that countries are facing due to its plethora of cyber targets.
4 of our top CSIS directors, who are leading national security experts, Walt Elcock, Richard Fadden, and also John Adams, have also warned the federal government that Huawei cannot be trusted. At the end of January, Elcock cautioned on not letting Huawei in our 5G network rollout and to not even follow what Britain has done by giving partial access to Huawei. He said that when it comes to intelligence sector compared to Canada, Britain is a bigger player. He also stated that, and I quote, "China is, at the end of the day, not a friend. It is a major counterintelligence target, and why would you bring your major counterintelligence target inside the tent?" And honestly, colleague, I agree with him. Why would we do that? Why would we deliberately expose and risk our national security and ourselves? It is literally like you are handing over your house key to a theft. Richard Warren, in his Globe and Mail op-ed January 2019, mentioned a number of reasons as to why so many security intelligence experts have warned us and sounded the alarm when it comes to letting Huawei getting involved in our 5G network. Une de ces raisons étant la relation et les liens très étroits entre Huawei et le gouvernement.
One of these reasons is the relationship and close links between Huawei and the Chinese government, a government which, it must be said, has an extensive history of cyber espionage. Another crucial and significant reason, which I should mention, is the adoption in 2017 of the Chinese National Intelligence Act. This act gives Beijing the power to compel individuals and public and private companies, as well as foreign operating companies, to force these individuals and companies to cooperate with the Chinese intelligence services agents, and if not, they may risk imprisonment. As far back as 2010, Mr. Fadden said that China was seeking to infiltrate and influence Canadian institutions, including provincial and local governments, as well as universities. Like all the other experts, Mr. Fadden is asking the government to ban Huawei for the protection of the security of Canadians.
Even our senior military official and Canada top soldier came out in the media asking the government to ban Huawei, as this Chinese government is the real threat to our national security. And this week, the Special Committee on Canada-China Relations released the document provided by Global Affairs, where it is stated that Canada, instead of working with China, should actually look into departing itself from China and work instead with like-minded allies and nations. Those documents further state, and I quote, The crisis has demonstrated Beijing's readiness and ability to use aggressive economic and political levers to punish Canada, a pattern observed in China-others bilateral relationship, and to propagate norms of international relations inimical to Canada's interest. Furthermore, do we really want to risk U.S. cutting off intelligence sharing with us, as they said they would, if we allowed Huawei in our 5G network? This situation is something not to take it lightly. It is extremely, extremely serious. Our most prominent security advisor, our Five Eyes allies, and many others are taking a clear stance on this, and their sound advices must be imperatively followed. Honorable Senators, it is quite clear that Huawei will most probably be called upon anytime by the Chinese single ruling party to spy and gather data on adversaries and competitors if it hasn't happened yet. As such, Huawei cannot and must not be trusted with our 5G network, since it is not free of the Chinese government influence. Canadians are anticipating their government to implement 5G's mobile technology, but not to the detriment of their security and privacy. They deserve to know all of the implications and risks this Chinese company poses. They deserve to know the dangers they could be exposed to and foreign threat hovering over their heads. The importance of this shouldn't be sold short. This motion is unequivocally of paramount importance. The Standing Senate Committee on National Security and Defense should most definitely be allowed to study the implication of permitting or not Huawei to have access to our 5G network. Thank you.
Senator from Elton.